Hey, what's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist and today doing an Ursartic deck profile. So I'm really excited to you guys because this deck is a really amazing synchro deck that actually synchro summons with a twist. You actually don't use addition to synchro summon, you use subtraction, which is a super interesting way to actually synchro summon. With the recent release of the Draw 7 spell card for this deck, I'm super excited to do an update. So without further ado guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell in there so you can become part of Notification Squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below for all those awesome rewards, like getting your name featured in every single video, getting a signed cards in the mail, and even getting to request a deck profile every single month you're a patron, along with test stands. So without further ado, let's get straight on into this. So first off, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Ursartic Megapolar. This card is a really good 3-of in the deck that has a really amazing effect, and all of your Ursartics share a similar ability that during the main phase, quick effect, you contribute one other level 7 or higher monster from your hand to be able to special summon this card from your hand, but also you cannot special summon for the rest of the turn except monsters with levels. Now all of your Ursartic monsters share that ability that are in the main deck. Now this card's unique ability is if this card is special summon, you can add an Ursartic monster from your deck to your hand except another copy of itself, which is a great effect. We then play 3 copies of Ursartic Mechatanus. This card is also a pretty good 3-of in the deck, that its unique ability is if this card is special summoned, then you can target an Ursartic monster in the graveyard and add it back to your hand, which is a pretty good effect, especially when you're tributing a bunch of your monsters to get additional monsters on the field. We then play 3 copies of Mechabilis. This card is a good 3-of in the deck. Basically, you want to play 3 of each of these because this card is really good because its unique ability is if this card is special summoned, then you can special summon an Ursartic monster from your hand, getting you an additional monster on the field to go in for a synchro play. For the Ursartic tuner monsters, we're going to be playing a 3 copies of Megapolar. Megapolar is a great tuner monster for the deck that has a unique ability that if this card is special summoned while you control another Ursartic monster, then you target a spell or trap your opponent controls and destroy it, which is a really good effect to basically just have a monster that can special summon itself to your side of the field while also popping a spell or trap. We then play 3 copies of Ursartic Megatanus. This card is a really neat ability as well, that if this card is special summoned while you control another Ursartic monster, then you target a face-up monster your opponent control and change it to face-down defense, basically being a Book of Moon, which is a really good effect. We then play 3 copies of Ursartic Megabilis. Megabilis is the last Ursartic monster that we're playing in the second, but it has a unique ability that if this card is special summon while you control another Ursartic monster, you can target 1 card in your opponent's graveyard and banish it, which is a really good effect because during the main phase, he's a quick effect to be able to special summon to your field. So basically you can use him almost like a DD Crow, which is kind of neat. We then play 3 copies of Righty Driver. Righty Driver is going to be one of the only normal summons we have in the deck, but it's really good because for the synchro summon, you can substitute this card for any one synchro or for any tuner. And if this card is normal summoned, then you can special summon a Lefty Driver from your hand, deck, or graveyard, which is a really good effect because the difference in their level is 1. So you can actually go for your other Ursartic, your level 1 Ursartic synchro monster really easily by just normal summoning out the copy of the Righty Driver and then special summoning out your copy of Lefty Driver, which Lefty Driver has the ability that if this card is special summoned, you can make this card's level become 3 until the end phase of the turn. And it also has the ability that during the main phase, except during this card was sent to the graveyard, you can banish this card from your graveyard to add a Righty Driver from your deck to your hand, which is why you play 2 copies of it, so you can banish 1 to be able to get to your copy of Righty Driver all over again. We then play 2 copies of Crystal Girl. Crystal Girl is a good 2-of as well because she has the ability that if this card is normal or special summon, you can activate this effect that during the end phase of this turn, you can add a level 5 or higher water monster from your deck to your hand, which all of your Ursartic monsters are level 7 or 8, so this card is going to be able to search any of them. And if you control a level 5 or higher water monster and this card's in the graveyard, then you can special summon this card but banish it when it leaves the field, which is pretty good, especially on a level 1 monster. We then play 2 copies of Gameciel as well. Gameciel is basically here just to out any card that your opponent summons against you while you're playing Ursartic, because this deck has no problem summoning out boss monsters, but you want a way to be able to get rid of your opponent's boss monsters, so when your boss monster hits the field, you can just attack. And also Gameciel is searchable with your copy of Crystal Girl, which is really nice for this deck. So that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the spells. So for the spells, we're going to be playing a single copy of Monster Reborn. Monster Reborn is really good in this deck, especially with all the high-level monsters that we're playing, to be able to get them back on the field so we can go in for all of our crazy plays. We then play a single copy of Ursartic Drytron. Ursartic Drytron is a super interesting card because the Ursartic monsters and the Drytron monsters are actually connected with this card because you can summon out a really good fusion monster using this card, but you don't use monsters as the materials. You actually use your field spells, which is really weird but kind of cool because this card has the ability that you get to fusion summon an ultimate flagship Ursatron from your extra deck by banishing one Ursartic Big Dipper and a Drytron Fafnir from your hand or field, although you can banish one of them from the deck instead. And if a Ursartic Polera or a Drytron Alpha Thuban is on the field, if you would tribute a monster's, then you can activate to activate an Ursartic or Drytron monster's effect, then you can banish this card from the graveyard instead, giving you that ability to basically just banish this card so you don't have to get rid of a card from your hand to summon out one of your Ursartic monsters. But being able to have that Polera so you can get that banish from the deck is super easy to be able to do in this deck though, because you're going to be summoning out Polera all the time. We then play 3 copies of Ursartic Departure. This card is a good searcher for the deck because it has the ability to be able to discard a card to add 2 Ursartic monsters from your deck to your hand, and if you tribute a monster to activate an Ursartic monster's effect, except the turn this card was sent to the graveyard, you can banish this card from the graveyard instead, which is again a really good effect. We then play 2 copies of Ursartic Slider. Ursartic Slider is just a good 2-of in this deck. It has the ability you can target one of your Ursartic monsters that's banished or in your graveyard and special summon it, but it can't attack and also destroy it during the end phase, and also for the rest of the turn, you cannot special summon monsters that don't have a level, except for monsters with levels, which is pretty good because basically it locks you out of Link monsters and XZ monsters. We then play 3 copies of Ursartic Radiation. This card is the new crazy draw 7. This card has the ability that you activate this card by placing 7 counters on it. And each time an Ursartic monster is special summoned from your hand or extra deck, you can remove a counter from this card and draw a card. And then once per turn during the end phase, you can target an Ursartic card in the grave, except another copy of itself, and shuffle it into the deck. This card is not once per turn to remove those counters. So if you can special summon out 7 Ursartic monsters, you can draw 7 cards in a single turn with this card. This card is absolutely crazy and a great 3-of in this deck. You've got to play 3 copies of this card. This card is so good for this deck. You probably get away with 2, but I really like 3. We then play 2 copies of Ursartic Big Dipper. This card is super easy to get to in the deck because when you synchro summon into your Polare, you're just going to immediately get this card. But this card has the ability that once per turn, if your Ursartic monster would tribute a monster's to activate its effects, you can banish a level 7 or higher Ursartic monster from your graveyard instead. And each time a monster is special summoned, you place a counter on this card. And then once per turn, if a monster is special summoned and an Ursartic synchro monster is on the field, except during the damage step, you can remove all counters from this card, minimum 7, and then target a monster opponent controls and take control of it, which is kind of a neat thing for this card to be able to do. We then play a single copy of Fafnir because we do play Drytron Fafnir as a 1-of because you can use it with the Ursartic Drytron fusion spell to be able to go in for our flagship, which is really nice. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Ursartic Polera. This card is a great 3-of and really easy to synchro summon because basically you just use one of your tuner monsters and one of your other Ursartic monsters that's not a tuner to go into this card because all of their differences in level is 1, because this card has the ability that it cannot be synchro summoned. It must be special summoned from your extra deck by sending 2 monsters you control with a level difference of 1 to the graveyard, which is why I said at the beginning of the video that you use subtraction because they're all 7 and 8. So you do 7 minus 8 equals 1 to go into this card. It has the ability also that it takes a tuner and a non-tuner to go in this card, and if this card is special summoned, then you can activate 1 Ursartic Big Dipper directly from your deck, and you contribute a level 7 or higher monster to add, or you can actually activate the ability to tribute 1 level 7 or higher monster and add to your hand, or special summon an Ursartic monster from your graveyard, which is pretty good because then it helps you climb into your other Ursartic boss monsters, which we play 2 copies of Sep. Sep is a good 2-of in this deck because it has the ability that it can't be synchro summoned, it must be special summon from your extract by sending 2 monsters you control with a different level of 7 to the graveyard, 1 level 8 or higher tuner, and a 1 non-tuner synchro monster to the graveyard, and negate the evasive effects of monsters without levels that were special summoned from the extract. So basically you stop all Link monsters and XZ monsters with this card. And if your opponent controls a special summon monster, except during the damage step, you can add a Ursartic card from your deck to your hand, which is a pretty good effect that if your opponent special summons that monster, you just get to add one of those cards from your deck to your hand. I really like that effect. We then play 2 copies of Grand Chariot. Grand Chariot is a good 2-of as well. It can't be synchro summoned. It must be special summoned from your extract by sending 2 monsters that you control with difference level of 7 to the graveyard, 1 level 8 monster, and a non-tuner monster that's a non-tuner, or a tuner monster, excuse me, and a non-tuner synchro monster to summon this card. And if this card is special summoned, then you can target 2 other cards on the field and destroy them, which is really good to get that pop 2 off this effect. But you're always going to use your Polara plus another card to go into either of these cards, which is pretty good. But this card also has the ability to, once per turn, when a card or effect is activated that targets an Ursartic, the card that you control, quick effect, you contribute a monster from your hand or field and negate the effect, which is pretty good to give you that added protection. We then play a single copy of Trishula, Zero Dragon of the Ice Barrier. This card is pretty easy to actually go into in this deck because you play so many high level monsters, and it's a really good boss monster to be able to go into, especially with the single copy of Trishula that we're also playing. These are basically really easy to go into in this deck with the copy of Righty and Lefty Driver. Really good cards, really amazing boss monsters as well. 1 copy of Baron de Fleur, again, very easy to go into in this deck, but you're basically just going for this top line the majority of the time with your Ursartic monsters. All these other cards are pretty much tech monsters that you can go into, so you don't have to play the Baron de Fleur. If you want a little bit more budget option, you can play Satellite Warrior instead, which is another monster that you can go into that's a level 10. We then play a single copy of Ravenous Croco Dragon, really good to help you draw cards and a really good monster to summon. 1 copy of Shinshin, the Virtual World QB. This card basically is a walking macrocosmos, which is really nice. 1 copy of Dragite because it negates spells and traps while you have a water monster in the graveyard, which the entire deck is water, so it's very easy to be able to put this card on the field as a spell and trap negate. 1 copy of White Aura Whale because this card is an insanely powerful monster that when this card is synchro summoned, you can destroy all monsters that your opponent controls that are in attack position, which is just a really good effect to be able to use and helps you go in for game. And then we play a single copy of the ultimate flagship Ursatron. Ursatron is pretty easy to summon in this deck, and it's just a really good card because it has the ability must be special summoned with Ursartic Drytron, and then once per turn, if another effect monster is special summoned to your field, except during the damage step, you can add an Ursartic or a Drytron monster from your deck to your hand, and then once per turn, you can target 1 of your banished Ursartic or Drytron monsters and add it to your hand. Pretty good effect to be able to basically be a walking searcher. So that's it for the deck, guys. I hope you did enjoy it. It's a really fun deck to play with. I highly recommend that you guys have not played with Ursartic. It is just such a good deck to be able to play with. It's a really amazing synchro deck that basically just synchro summons with a twist. So anyways, guys, this is DarkArmedDuelist. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell in there so you can become part of the notification squad, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.